quality preservation, right? Making sure that the water is clean and making sure that there's enough of it. This becomes our means. This is not an end. The selection of either this or that is simply a means to get to something else. What's that something else? That something else was already previously presented in hypothetical syllogism. What was the goal? What is C in hypothetical syllogism? It talks about the quality of the water supply, right? So we need to recognize that when we make this selection, right, this selection doesn't stand in a vacuum. Once we make this selection, we recognize that insofar as we've made a selection of either A or B, and we ended up choosing B, that B needs to contribute to the purification or the decontamination or at least the non-interference of contamination, the non-introduction of contaminants into the existing water supply. That's how it's linked, right? That's how it's linked. And today, when in compiling it, I was like, this is going to be super hard to try and explain this, but that's where we're going to be able to legitimize our denial. So, now we can move on. Take a step back. And you can go through your notes and figure this out yourself. It'll be a good game. It'll be fun. For you uber nerds like me, you'll have fun. I've embedded lots of goodies into the lecture notes. Hypothetical Syllogism Part 3 and 4, which is the second conditional claim in HS in Section 3. We have if B, then C. And here's directly what it says, so that you don't have to look back. You can just, I looked back, I copied and pasted it here to demonstrate the proof of what the end is. This is not the end. We're making a selection as a means to get us to the end. That's important. Since the end has already been stated, I've already stated previously what the goal is, we recognize that there has to be a connection between, obviously, the means and the goals. I mean, that's obvious, right? So, B, if population growth increases, C, then the likelihood for water pollution also increases. Now, this is the meta-analytic part that I was talking about, right? Meta-analysis is not concerned with the logic appropriated to the construction of the argument. It is concerned with the internal logic of the coherence and the strength of the connections binding each internal section. Right? I had a question on Facebook, I think it was today or yesterday, today being the time of the video going up. Actually, this video might not go up until tomorrow or the day after, because I already have videos in the upload while I'm shooting this video. Sort of manic. But I love it. So who knows? Basically, I had a response the time that I shot this video. And the dude asked me, I don't know what he asked me about, but he asked me about something that led me to respond to basically meta-analysis. And I realized, holy crap, I can introduce that into my lecture series right now. But the idea is, when, his question was something like, when you read, what do you read for? And I think he might have asked me the question last night, but I answered it today. And I, you know, in a sense, it depends on who I'm reading, but when I go to read Kant, or when I go to read Nietzsche, or Foucault to a lesser extent, but definitely Kant and Nietzsche, when I go to read those dudes and anything that they publish, it's like, I break out a pen, a pencil, an eraser, freaking, you know, I take an audio recorder to record my thoughts and my feelings. I mean, those dudes write heavy. Spinoza, when I go to read Spinoza, Leibniz, I break, you know, you have to track what they're saying. It's that dense. I'm not so much interested when I read those guys. I'm not really interested in, you know, people love to say, oh, well, you know, really what he was talking about when he was talking about the transcendental aesthetic was the blah, 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 blah. All of that is interesting. What I'm more interested in is how did he arrive at that notion of the transcendental aesthetic based on sort of its relationship to, you know, other parts, right? Phenomenological experience, the Ding on Sig, sort of the relationship between the transcendental aesthetic and the categories, like that is what I'm more interested in. The internal relationship, logically, of parts. Not so much the content of what he's saying. Because if I can recognize the template of what he's saying, I can extract that template, get rid of the content, and use that template like I would any other logical template to create my own argument, to transform the way I think about stuff. Right? So that's what I do. It's like get rid of the content, get to the template, the thing that he invisibly used to construct this masterpiece, and look at the nature of the logic and see if I have the type of mind that can replicate that to understand it. Right? So that's my approach. So that is binding section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I thought there was going to be 5 sections. There's only 4, so I got to scratch out 5. There won't be 5 sections. There's only 4. But we need to seek to justify the internal legitimacy, how these arguments have been connected, linked, or not appropriating the former. I don't know what that means. Legitimacy and not appropriating the former conditional to our disjunctive syllogism. So, meta-analytic. Since regulating population growth, which currently occupies part 1 of the disjunctive syllogism, says either we regulate population growth, disjunctive syllogism, this is section 4, either we regulate population growth or we do something else. Now, let's just start with we attempt, and I think the proper wording I have is we attempt to, it's an affirmation, either we attempt to regulate population growth or we attempt to do something else, right? So, attempt to regulate population growth. Now think about this, right? And this is what's tricky. I'm attempting now to show you how we're eventually going to justify the negation. Everything that I'm talking about now for the next few minutes is my conceptual demonstration to show you how we're going to justify the negation of this attempt so that when the question is theoretically asked from a conceptual objector, we can say, oh, well, here's why we denied it. Okay. And obviously I knew this beforehand. I put it in that weak position so that I could justify it, right? I put it in that position so that you could ask me, so that I could show you. So I'm already like 3 steps ahead, right? That's how you got to think. It's like I know when I do that, someone's going to ask me and I already have my answer ready for them, which they wouldn't have anticipated, right? So this is the nature of the game, right? Since regulating population growth could also result in population growth increasing, I mean, obviously, if you regulate population growth, you allow it to maintain. That's a form of regulation. I don't want more, I don't want less, I maintain it. That's regulating. Obviously, you decrease the population growth. Genocide studies, I do this for a living, studying that ability, which is ridiculous to think that all of my work so far has just been conceptualizing that little bit. That's a form of regulation, killing people so that it's less. But also increasing. Creating conditions where you want people to have tons and tons of babies, which is less common, historically speaking. There's also a means of regulation, right? So that when we talk about regulation, it's maintenance, it's decrease, it's increase, but increase is absolutely within the scope of regulating population is a larger set than increasing population. Increasing population is a smaller, and you could even put set theory on this, right? Increasing population is a smaller set of regulation than regulation. Regulation of population is a larger set, and obviously increasing is undeniably, this is like, I mean, everything is logically factual here. Increasing is a smaller set within a larger set of regulating population. So yes, it's clearly, right, it is legitimate to say that increasing the population is within the set of regulating the population. That's a fact. Why in the world is that important? Why did he just say that, right? Isn't increasing and regulating roughly the same thing? Well, not necessarily. I just explained why. They're different, scopes are different. But what we recognize is that part 3 of our hypothetical syllogism, this is part 3 of our hypothetical syllogism, used exactly the same wording. It talked about increasing population. What I want you to see now, conceptually, and you have to intuit this. You're not going to be able to find this in a book. You have to intuit this. If we say that we are attempting to regulate population, and we say that the regulation of population is a larger set, the regulation of population, which includes increasing the population, factors, imposing factors to increase population, increase birth, promote birth, maintain population or decrease population, is a larger set than what we've said in our hypothetical syllogism, which is if population growth increases, so population growth is smaller. So there is a relationship between disjunct 1 in our disjunctive syllogism and the antecedent 2 in our hypothetical syllogism. There is a relationship. So we have to recognize conceptually that the implication of making this choice is going to influence the hypothetical syllogism, our antecedent, our second antecedent, and this is the tricky part. You have to see that. And people actually do this, and I appreciate that when they do this. So for those of you who may and hopefully will do this in the future, I'm giving you, at this